John White here with the Luke 10 community. And this video is part of our Leader 101 course. This is designed to equip and connect leaders of small groups, often called house churches around the world. It's now August of 2015. We're about 3 months into the Leader 101 course, and I am thrilled with what we're hearing so far. Lots of great stories about how God is using this course in the lives of the leaders that are a part of it. And in fact, as you guys are watching this video, if you're part of Leader 101, I want to encourage you to write me an email and tell me how God is using it in your life. And we value the whole idea of telling stories in the Luke 10 community. And so need to hear stories from you guys about how God is using this course in your lives. And for those of you who don't know, the course is divided into small groups called leader teams. So everybody in the course is part of a learning community called a leader team. Now, this particular video has to do not with the theme of this month, which is cultivating the habit of looking for 10-to-be answers, but rather I felt led this last week to share some things with you that's kind of a larger picture of what we were up to in the Luke 10 community. And it has to do with a book that I discovered about 10 years ago, 2004, 2005, which has really transformed a lot of my thinking about the nature of church and house church. And I want to share with you about that today. This is one of the most important books that I think I've ever read. But a little bit of background, first of all. The Protestant Reformation took place 1500s, and you have people like Calvin and Luther and others who are saying the church needs to be reformed, feeling that the Catholic Church of that time had departed from a lot of the New Testament beliefs and values, and so that's a lot of what the Reformation was about. In fact, one of Luther's statements was that the primitive church is the true church. And so in his heart was trying to go back to the beginnings and capture what it was that Jesus had in mind, what it was he was teaching to his disciples, and so on. And so the Reformation was, to a degree, successful at recapturing some of the beliefs and doctrine, the theology of the New Testament. However, there was a key question that really wasn't asked. And so we're talking today about some ideas that Luther and Calvin didn't know, and a lot of other people didn't know as well, including my seminary professors. I was in seminary in the early 70s, and what I'm about to share with you today is not stuff that we talked about in seminary, but I've come to see it as absolutely foundational. So that's a little bit of the background. Fast forward to the 1990s. There's a man by the name of Roger Gehring. He's on staff with Campus Crusade. He's stationed in Germany and working with the various college campuses there. And someplace along the line, a friend of his suggested he ought to go to seminary. He was a pretty smart guy, so he did that and took a lot of the classes, and he's pursuing, I think, his doctorate. And he finally comes down towards the end, and part of what you have to do is you have to write a thesis, and he really didn't have any great ideas on what to do that on, so he was talking to his advisor, and again, I'm telling you as best I know the story, and his advisor said, why don't you do your thesis on the physical location of church in the New Testament and the implications of that? Well, Roger wasn't a house church guy, really had never thought about that, but it seemed like a good idea, and so he took that on as his project. And as he researched, he found a very interesting thing, that up until about 1980, there was almost nothing on this subject of the physical location of church in the first century. There were a couple little things along the way. A couple people had raised the issue, but it hadn't become a real point of discussion. But beginning in 1980, he found that there were 5 major theological papers by New Testament scholars on this subject. It was like this explosion out of nowhere had occurred. And they all were saying somewhat similar things. And that is that the early church was really based in the home. That they called them house churches. And that was hugely significant. And not just that that we met in homes because we were so poor we couldn't build a building, or because we met in homes because of persecution and we had to stay hidden. There was some of that, but what began to come to light was that there actually was a theological basis for this idea. It wasn't just a practical idea or a historical curiosity, but it was really rooted in some theological concepts. And so Roger writes this paper. I think it originally was in German, and then he translates it into English, and it becomes this book. Here's a copy of the book. It's called House, Church, and Mission: The Importance of Household Structures in Early Christianity. Now, it's not an easy read. Again, it's written on a doctoral level, 450 pages. And as I read through it, I thought, I want to see if I can summarize what he's saying. So I began to pull out key quotes from the book. I have a 16-page summary of his key ideas. And if any of you are interested in reading it, I'm going to put some of it in the blog that this video will be a part of. But if any of you are interested in reading my notes, just send me an email. Be happy to send that to you. And I always would encourage anyone who's interested to read the whole book. It's some work, but it's really worth reading. Why was this book so significant for me? I want to share with you 3 ideas. They're more than this, but these are 3 of the biggies. The first thing that impacted me was the idea that the very best New Testament scholarship is saying the same things. And that is that the physical location of church was in homes. People, we kind of knew that before. They just hadn't thought very deeply about it. And that this was very significant in shaping our ecclesiology. Ecclesiology comes from the word ecclesia, meaning church. And so it's the study of church, or the doctrine of church. And that shaped the New Testament ecclesiology. So for a long time, I had this saying, which you've probably heard before, that Scripture is our authoritative guide for faith and practice. And that's sort of a bedrock idea, faith and practice. But I began to think about the fact that the practice of New Testament church was significantly different from what I had experienced growing up and what I'd been trained to do. I'd gone to seminary. I'd been a pastor for 25 years. It dawned on me one day that if you said the word church, the picture that came to mind was the place where I met the Lord, Fourth Presbyterian Church of Bethesda, Maryland. Great church. Beautiful red brick building, white pillars, pews, stained glass windows, the whole thing that you associate with church. And this thunderbolt hit me one day that if the Apostle Paul had shown up there on Sunday morning and gone to church with us, I think he would have walked out of there and saying, I don't know what this place is, and I don't know what I just experienced for the last hour. I don't think it's church. That's a good thing. There was a good lecture, and there was some nice music and all the rest, but the essence of church in the New Testament was very different, because all the churches that he knew met in homes. All the churches he planted met in homes and functioned like small spiritual families. They were highly interactive. Watchman Nee is said to have said that he could capture the essence of New Testament church in one word, and that one word was mutuality. It was highly participatory. And as good as our churches were, it wasn't that. It was all what I would now call spectator Christianity. So that was the first revelation to me from Gehring. And that is that the very best New Testament scholarship paints a picture of church that is radically different from what I had understood church to be. And it's no wonder that it's slow to catch on. I think it's happening, but it's slow to catch on, because all the church leaders, I mean, think about it, what they're invested in. They've been to seminary. We've had building campaigns, and we work hard to get great music and great childcare, and we'd have a good parking, and so much of their emotional and financial capital is invested in what we understand to be church. And so to come along, even though this is what the picture the Bible paints, is pretty radical stuff, and it's slow to catch on, but I think it's happening. I think God is returning Christians to New Testament Christianity. And maybe the United States will be one of the last places that we'll see it happen. That's the first thing. Here's the second thing that I saw from Gehring. Jesus was a church planter. I don't know why I didn't know that. I just had never even thought about it. It's almost like churches somehow magically materialized in Acts, and they didn't really do that before then. But Gehring shows me that Jesus planted churches. And the key is around this idea of church. The word church is only used twice in the Gospels. But Gehring defines a church as the base of operations for the kingdom of God in a particular neighborhood. We sometimes talk about imparting the virus of the kingdom into a house of peace. And so when we think of a church that way, it's pretty clear that Jesus had that in Peter's home. Martha and Mary and Lazarus, probably Zacchaeus. And we have other indications of homes that were the base of operation for the kingdom for Jesus. And he traveled around and imparted the kingdom in those places. We also know that because I think it stands to reason that Jesus is not going to teach his disciples to do something that he himself isn't doing. Luke 6:40 says that a disciple, when he's fully taught, will be like his master. If you're going to be like Jesus, you would be doing the same things that he's doing. So I think that Jesus started churches, and then he taught his disciples how to do the same thing. So that's the second aha for me. Jesus himself was a church planter. And I think he did that. I think it comes out of the doctrine of the Trinity. Jesus had experienced the Trinity, the fellowship of the Trinity, the mutuality, the mutual love, the mutual respect, the mutual service of the Trinity throughout eternity past. And so doesn't it make sense that he would want to replicate those same values, that same small, intimate, life-giving, joy-centered group on earth? I think that's exactly what he was doing, and he did it in the context of the family. A lot of the churches that I pastored, we divide the family. The family shows up at church on Sunday morning, and the junior high kids go over here, and the little babies go over here, and the adults go over here, and the old people go over here, and it divides the family. The New Testament church, the family and the church were really one thing. It all took place in the same place. So that's the second idea. Here's the third concept, that Jesus had a strategy for the expansion of the kingdom. Or to say it another way, Jesus had a strategy for the fulfillment of the Great Commission. I've heard about the Great Commission ever since I became a Christian. And what I've seen over these 50 years is that all kinds of people have invented great strategies for the fulfillment of the Great Commission. And they're all great strategies, but they're all human strategies. What if Jesus had a strategy? And if he had a strategy, what exactly was that strategy? And I think Gehring lays that out. Here's what it looks like. Number one, stage one, Jesus planted churches, small kingdom communities. That was his strategy. His strategy is church planting. Stage two, we see in Matthew 10. In Matthew 10, it says Jesus called 12 people to himself, paired them up, so he's got 6 teams, sends them out to do what? Find a worthy home, he says. And what do you do there? You say, the kingdom of God has come here. You heal the sick, cast out demons, and so on. What is he doing? I think he is teaching his guys how to plant churches. So now he's got 6 church planting teams. How many churches did they plant? I don't know, 6, 12, probably a bunch. And so that's stage two. Stage three, we see in Luke 10. So there's a strategy that's beginning to develop here. And I believe, as I've said before, that Jesus was praying the 10-2-B prayer between Matthew 10 and Luke 10. It's about a year takes place. As we look at the record, it's about a year. And these teams are going out. They're planting churches. Probably Jesus is debriefing and doing more teaching on how to do that. But he's also beseeching the Lord of the harvest to send out more apostolic church planters. And lo and behold, the Lord of the harvest does that. And so in 1 year, the number of apostolic church planters has grown by 700%. I think that's an amazing thing that should encourage us to be praying the 10-2-B prayer. And so now he's got 84 guys, divides them into twos, sends them out to every town and village where he's going to go. And so he's now got 42 teams, 42 church planting teams. And Josephus, first century Jewish historian, says there were 204 towns and villages in Israel in the first century. I think Jesus had a strategy for saturation church planting. And by the time that he left, that he was crucified, I think it's very likely that a large number of those 200 towns and villages had these little kingdom communities, these little bases of operation of the kingdom functioning in their midst. So that's stage three. Stage four, Gehring says, is the whole Easter experience. And so we see Acts 2, and it says that they met there were 3,000 people who came to faith, and it says they were meeting from house to house. And Gehring calculates, if you had 20 people in a house church, it would take about 150 house churches in Jerusalem. And he shows how that's a very realistic number. If you get 42 church planting teams, that's not at all impossible to think that you might have 150 house churches in Jerusalem. That's stage 4. And then finally stage 5. And that's on throughout the book of Acts. And I think you see Peter and you see Paul and the others doing the same kind of thing, and that is birthing these little house churches. I'd never seen that before. 5-part strategy that Jesus had. And when I saw that, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do it the way Jesus did it. And that's really the origins of the Luke 10 community. This is a group of men and women who are saying, we want to fulfill the Great Commission the way Jesus did it. And that is by birthing these little kingdom communities. It's our passion to see these groups, which we sometimes call vibrant families of Jesus, to see them multiplying so that there is literally one on every block. There's one with an easy access of every person in every region. So every city, county, town, country, whatever region you might be called to, and with every people group. So those are different languages. So Church 101 has been translated into French, into Russian. It's being translated into the primary language of the Philippines, and other languages. It's multiplying into these people groups. That's our passion to see that occur. Why? Because we think that's how Jesus did it. And we want to continue his practice of doing church, what that looked like, and then also of planting these churches. So friends, you guys that are part of Leader 101, these are things that Calvin and Luther didn't know. These are things that my seminary professors didn't know. These are things that it seems that even since 1980, the Lord is kind of bringing to our awareness, and little by little is beginning to permeate the thoughts and the emotions of believers around the world. So you guys are on the forefront. You guys are pioneers in what I think the Lord is doing. And I think we're going to see an explosion of these vibrant family of Jesus throughout the United States, as well as in other countries. We're praying for literally 1 million of these little kingdom communities to be formed in the U.S. And then, each country, what are you praying for? So I hope that you are encouraged by this book. Again, if you want my notes, email me, let me know, and I'll put some of the things in the blog post for this week. But delighted to be on the journey with you guys. Hope you enjoy Roger Gehring as much as I have. Thank you.